In this video, we're going to dig into kids sports and how they could lead to scholarships. We're also going to dive into being a girl dad at home alone with your child and all that could happen. Let's get into it.
So there was a number of changes that we made, my wife and I made. And so with our oldest son, he actually got a little bit of the bad, and then he got a lot of the good after he was 6 years old. Leland was born in between Travis Air Force Base and Keesler Air Force Base down in Mississippi. From there, my two older boys, they were athletes, and I loved basketball, baseball, football, and so I was always out there with them, playing the sports. And so they came along, and so they were natural athletes.
Deke got a scholarship for baseball, right?
Yes.
And then Leland got a scholarship for basketball. I call it the Perry genetics because we'll get into it a little later, but my wife is an all-natural athlete. She's never seen a sport that she didn't want to compete in.
If I could explain it this way, no matter what he did, if he saw it on TV, he would try it. I'll give you a prime example. Bowlers. My wife and I were bowlers, and he had never bowled with us. We would take him to the bowling alley all the time. And then all of a sudden I watched him bowling, and he had this nice, he developed this on his own. It wasn't, we had nothing to do with it. And then his uncle Marty was a very avid golfer. And he'd pick up the clubs, and he could figure out how to do it fairly easily. Dwayne was he played football and baseball, but he got his scholarship in baseball.
Girl dads, dads in general. It don't have to be dads in general. That is something that is just amazing to have. 3 kids, all 3 of them get scholarships to where that extra stress and strain of college is not there.
Yeah.
We've touched on so much. As I recollect, one of the things I want to really dig into is, because I've had to do it, and I know that, parenting in general, you've had to do it, is make life changes, not just to benefit yourself. If you're doing something that is not bringing life to your family, whether, my addiction was video games. That is what I struggled with but prior to marriage, that's what I knew. I spent a lot of time gaming before it was such a big culture like it is now. That was my thing, and it was causing problems in marriage. It was causing problems as a girl dad, because anybody that's played any type of game knows that when you get focused on one thing, other things lose focus. And so if you've got a toddler crawling around your house while you're playing some first-person Call of Duty game, there's a chance something's going to happen that's not going to be good. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is. I'm just saying there are things in our lives that you're going to have to change for the benefit of not just yourself, but as your family and your kids. So as a father, it's your responsibility. What got me is when you talked about the compelling power of Christ. Mm-hmm. That will be that 180 turn. Yep. Now, you might not stop everything on a heartbeat, but you're going to change the mindset. Your heart's going to change, and you're going to head down that path to pursue, like he was talking about in the book, all right? Mm-hmm. The Bible, the life instruction manual. That was so powerful. I was sitting here and just when you said that, it just resonated with me as how powerful that is. And I was talking to my wife earlier today, and I was thinking about a situation that had happened, and I was like, I don't know how people survive that don't pray for their kids, and don't pray for wisdom, and don't pray for praying for patience, because to get patience, you got to go through something to get that patience. So careful with that. Anyway, wisdom, knowledge, understanding. You know, pray for that all the time. And for me, the more kids I got, the more girls I got, the more I was praying. Is that the case, Pop?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the first things that we learned as we studied the Bible back then was the whole ideal of denying yourself. Denying yourself and taking up his cross daily and following him. So that was here at a heart level. So we knew that that's something that we had to do. And so it showed up in various different ways. I was going to school at ITT. I was also working a job. So going to school in the morning, working a job to the evening. So what that meant is that my wife had all 3 kids. So of course at a certain time she needed a break. Didn't matter how tired I was. And sometimes I did okay, sometimes I didn't. You know, but that was the goal, and I always remember that was what I needed to do.
When we first had Sasha, when my wife was a on-shift firefighter, and so 24 on, 48 off. Of course, I'm not gonna say we were young, as in like in our 20s, because we were already in our 30s by then. But we were younger and still getting it together in our finances, and so there would be opportunity for her to work a double, which meant, you know, more money for the family. I worked in IT, so mine was 9 to 5, 8 to 4, those type of shifts, right? So it was guaranteed. I knew what I was going to do from 8 to 4 p.m. or whatever it was. And so I spent a lot of time with Sasha, just me and her, because her mom would be on shift. And so there is regurgitation. There's dirty diapers, there's blowouts all the way up the back, all the way down to the ankles, and there's no one else there. It's you and your baby, and your baby's not going to clean herself. Shocking revelation right there. A baby cannot clean themselves. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but just you're there, and you got to figure it out. And mine was a phone call sometimes, and if she might answer, she might not. Depends on if she's fighting a fire or rescuing somebody that had a headache, a heart attack, or whatever, you know, because she did EMT as well. Mm-hmm. And so it's just me. And of course, YouTube and Google has opened up a broad selection of knowledge that you can do. But in the moment, when your hands are covered in stuff,
yeah,
you ain't got time to pull out your phone or you probably don't want to pull out your phone and search it up. So you just figure it out. Family dynamics are different. That you do what you got to do to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. I was talking earlier with Mama, and she was like talking about how I think you worked during the day, she worked at night, or flip flop, yeah. And you only had one car, and she was talking about riding her bike to work. That way they didn't have to have childcare, and you were with your kids, and so that might be what the stage of life you were referring to. Mm-hmm. But that right there is powerful, and I know, you know, I'm including a lot of dynamics with family and all that, but that's what I know. Mm-hmm. That this is what I know. This is part of my girl dad experience, because again, leaning on Pop. Mm-hmm. When I don't know what's going, you know, like, hey, this is what I'm seeing with Sasha. And he's like, well, this is what I see with Sasha. This is what I would do. Or you need to cultivate that, or you need to shut that down. The stubbornness that I'm starting to see, and the demand for independence that I'm getting from my 10-year-old. and I can only imagine that knowing my daughter and how she is, but also knowing my wife and how she is, you went through some of the same during that time frame or season. Let's dig into some of that.
We also in the church, we worked in the teen ministry, so we had a lot of kids around us, and some of these kids came from homes that there was no father in the home, and there was the mother was working all the time, so we had to deal with a lot. But here's the thing that I would say about that. My 2 older boys, I tended to spend more time with them as far as teaching them what I knew about basketball or baseball and being the manager of some of their teams. So I was always there. But when I think about Tish, I did not do the same for her because I wanted her to do what she wanted to do, not what I wanted her to do. So I was thinking, well, Lois, it's your turn to kick in. You can do what women do. Well, what happened was that the two older brothers were more involved in her training, and she became as a really good athlete.
Right.
And so of course I supported her. And then when she got her full scholarship, I was blown away. But it was different, and I don't know that I had a whole lot to do with it. Her brother Leland and Dwayne had more to do with that. Now, the other thing was I wanted all our kids to be somewhat independent and not dependent on us.
Right.
Because my father died when I was 17 years old. I was just getting ready to graduate and he died. So I didn't have a father there, and my mother who did not work up until the time he died, now all of a sudden as trying to work. She's got 3 teenage boys and 2 younger girls. And so that was a tough period in our life. And so I wanted my kids to be, well, they had to be respectful. I mean, I come from a father that was really hard on us. And so, of course, I was that. I was hard on them, and I learned to be a little bit more patient and forgiving, realizing the way that I was. So with my daughter being the third one, and sometimes you'll realize that you get better at this after 2 other tries. You become a better parent, but also when you're focusing on what God wants you to do, and you're learning how to be a better parent. She got the best of it, where Dwayne got the worst of it, if you understand what I'm saying. But I'm proud of all 3 of my kids, but my daughter is definitely independent, in every way that you can think of. Not that she won't get asked for advice. Yes, she'll ask for advice, but she will think on her own, and she will make decisions on her own. And sometimes decisions are not what I would want. But
absolutely.
I also learned through that period of time is, okay, buddy, you got to be okay with it. Right. And so I do not get involved. I do not force my way in my daughter's decisions. I do not force my way into their marriage. That their marriage is sacred. It's between them and God, but whatever they ask, oh, absolutely, I will share what I can. So that's yes, Tish was definitely an independent person, and so I can remember.
Here we go.
So when we first met Kevin, okay, so my daughter, she played actually women's professional football.
Full contact,
pads and all, and they had a game down in central Kentucky.
Hopkinsville,
Kentucky. And so Tish tells me and Lois, and wherever your kids are playing, you'll drive wherever.
So wait.
Go ahead.
So at the time, Tish was living in Jacksonville, Florida. Mom and Pop were living in Indianapolis, and I was living in Madisonville, Kentucky. So I was about 36 minutes away. So that's the dynamic.
We drive up. We walk. We go to the stands where we're going to sit, and Tish, she directed us to sit right here, and then all of a sudden Kevin comes up, and we said, oh, they're real friendly down here in Kentucky. It's not what I thought, but he was real friendly, not knowing that there was a relationship that had already been built.
I think Tish and I had known each other for about 8 months, and it was mostly text, phone calls, and emails. That night would be officially the first night that we ever talked in person. I was running behind and got to the game late, and so I look and I see the home stands, and there's people scattered out throughout that. I look at the visitors team, and there's a couple sitting there. Well, I was aware that they were coming, so I put one and one together and was like, "That's her parents. I'm gonna go say hey." Under the assumption
that we knew
that my friend had let them know I was gonna be there. That is not the case. So anyway, here comes Mr. Friendly. That led to all kinds of interesting conversations. But I think it was at the end of the game when Tish came over. She's sweaty from playing football. She's dirty. She's got her helmet in her hand. She's got the eye ink smeared, and she come over and gives me a hug. I think my baby gave y'all a hug and then gives me a hug. And I think it was that aha moment.
Yeah, that's exactly. So then we said, oh, okay. Now I understand. So Tish, she definitely told us. So they had a date later on, and we had time. We went out to dinner, and then we got the full story afterwards.
Which was amazing because the first official date that I went on with my future wife. So our first date, I guess, was a double date with her parents. It was amazing. And we went out to eat. We talked. We laughed. We discussed life, who I was. We discussed faith. And we sat there, probably 2.5 hours. We sat there just talking it up. And that was the first time that I met my future father-in-law, my future mother-in-law, and got to really spend time with Tish to know who she was in person. We left there and then spent another 2 hours talking at Starbucks. I dropped her off at the hotel they were staying at, told her goodnight, and then I headed home. It's been 17.5 years. Mm-hmm. There's been many ups and downs in my marriage that I've consoled with him. There's been the whole parenting, like I said, getting advice about how not to overstep and ruin it for your girls, how not or when to step and shut it down quick. I look up to him and in such a way because of how the consistency of what he's done in his life. What he has accomplished, what he's done repeatedly, whether it be making disciples in his living room or raising a disciple and his daughter, because I don't know what everyone else believes, but that's our faith. That's what we believe, right?
Absolutely.
And at the time, I needed that because I needed to see that outside of my little circle, and that's just powerful in and of itself.
What about the basement?
Right. Before becoming a girl dad, you got to get married, right? Before having kids, you got to get married. Yeah. And so in order to get married, you got to ask for the woman that you believe God has put in your life to be your wife. You got to ask permission from her dad. Can I have her hand? And so it wasn't easy, but I did it. I was courageous. I was sweating bullets, but I walked up to him and said, "We need to have a talk." And he had this smile.
I knew.
He had this smile. It was warm and welcoming, but intimidating at the same time. And he said, yeah, we could do that. But we ended up going into the basement. So I had already gotten a ring with anticipation of what I wanted to do. I showed the ring to Mama while they were in. She tears up. She's just like, fanning herself. Oh, it got hot in here. And then that's when I go and ask Pop. I was like, hey, we need to have a talk.